Today we're going to build these modular cliff rocks using XPS foam leftovers. These pieces can be used as cave interiors, as columns, in the middle of a canyon, or as rock formations in your battlefield. Get your tools ready because we're starting!
For this project, I've gathered various leftover pieces of XPS foam in different shapes and sizes. What we will do is join them using PVA glue and cocktail sticks. We will use the largest pieces for the base and stack the smaller pieces one by one, pressing them firmly together. Once everything is in place, we will let it dry for about 20 minutes, so that everything stays in place without shifting, but the glue hasn't completely hardened yet, allowing us to use the hot wire cutter without any issues. Next, I will use my Proxxon hot wire cutter to shape the piece, cutting in zigzag pattern to achieve an organic and natural look. This step requires patience and trusting in the process, since many cuts will be needed to make these leftover pieces resemble a rock formation. Now we're going to use a super complex tool to texture our piece. Indeed, we will use a foil ball. We will press firmly to indent the foam and move away from the smooth finish left by the hot wire cutter. To add a bit more detail, we will use the utility knife and the modeling blade to simulate cracks. Try to create points of interest using this technique, by adding cracks and breaks concentrated in some areas but leaving some parts of the rock barely touched. This way we will achieve a more realistic look. Although this step isn't strictly necessary, I've decided to create the base for our rock formation. This way, it will have more stability and we can add a bit more detail to the overall piece. I've chosen foam core since it's easy to work with using the knife, and the edges can be beveled comfortably. Additionally, unlike cardboard, it doesn't bend with humidity. We will use PVA glue again to attach the rock to the base and let it dry for at least 20 minutes before the next step. If you can wait, you can use hot glue, but make sure to use a low temperature gun, otherwise the glue will melt the foam. We also want to texture the base, but this time we will use another technique. First, we will cover the base with PVA glue and spread it evenly with an old brush. I apologize if the camera focuses on my arm and not the piece, but I think the process is still clear. Now we will cover the glue with two sizes sand. First, we will spread the coarse grained sand and then the fine sand. Although you can buy modeling sand at specialized stores or websites, I've obtained mine from the beach and mountains. Just make sure to bake it in the oven to kill any bacteria it might contain.
Alright, it's time to paint our cliff rocks, so get your brushes ready. But before we begin, if you're enjoying this tutorial and want to help me making more, hit the like button, subscribe and ring the bell. Also, if you have some ideas for crafting these rocks in a different way, leave me a comment down below.
Now it's time to paint, and the first thing we'll do is prime with a generous coat of a mixture made with black paint and PVA glue. We will paint thoroughly to ensure the paint reaches all the nooks, and if necessary, we will apply a second coat. If you have an airbrush, this step will be much easier and faster for you than it was for me. Once the base coat is completely dry, we will use an all makeup brush for dry brushing with dark gray all over the piece. We want to make sure not to overload the brush so that the deeper parts of the rock remain black. When the gray layer is dry, we will prepare a couple of inks. In my case, I've chosen a brown and a green, which will provide a nice undertone to make the piece a bit more visually dynamic. The ink will take some time to dry due to its high water content, and although it might be a bit intimidating to apply it for fear of ruining the piece, once dry, its effect will be greatly softened. Now we've prepared the groundwork for the final dry brush of the rocky part. We will use a brush lightly loaded with pure white, and making only vertical movements, we will paint with very little pressure, so that the shapes we've cut pops out. Finally, we will paint the base using a couple of brown tones. First, we will use a dark brown covering almost the entire base, although it's okay to let some black show through if you prefer. Next, we will dry brush with a lighter brown, so that the coarse sand we've glued stands out. Finally, we will do one last dry brush with barely any paint, using a lighter shade to add the final highlights.
This project is quite straightforward and can be completed in just one weekend. To achieve these shapes, you will need a hot wire cutter. However, if you don't have one and don't want to invest in one of them, you can use a knife, although the result will be much less smoother and you will probably take much more time in the building process. These pieces can be used as scatter terrain for your wargames or to level up your D&D table with some fancy cave terrain. It's up to you how you will use it, as the possibilities are endless since its modular nature. Remember that if you're gonna bring those pieces in a club or in a place that they will be extensively used, it's important to varnish them to extend their lifespan. So that's all, thank you very much for watching until the end and see you in another video.